My sister set up her phone to live stream our mother's will reading. She'd been promising her followers drama all week. They'd watch me get cut out completely. She got her viral moment. Just not the one she planned. Because the lawyer's final line, read live to 11,000 strangers, wasn't about me. It was her reckoning, recorded in real time, and there was no way to delete it. My name is Jessica, and my mother Linda spent the final months of her life watching my sister Ashley turn family grief into content. Before she died, she devised a plan to expose it, using the very platform Ashley had built. To understand what happened in that lawyer's office, you have to go back to our father's funeral. That was the day my mother Linda realized her older daughter had become something unrecognizable. I watched it happen in real time. Ashley arrived at the church with a ring light and a tripod. She'd been building her following for about a year by then, lifestyle vlogs, beauty routines, the usual. But the week Dad died, something shifted. Her thumbnails changed. All caps, sobbing face, telling him why KIDS grandpa is gone. The views were 10 times her normal numbers. So at the funeral home, while our mother sat in the front row too stunned to cry, Ashley set up her equipment in the back corner. She angled the camera to capture the casket, the flowers, the mourners. And then she did what influencers do. She told her audience to like and subscribe, standing next to our father's body. Mom didn't say anything that day. She was too deep in grief to process what she was seeing. But my grandmother once told me that Linda kept a journal for years, and that after the funeral, she started a folder on her laptop labeled Ashley. I didn't know that folder existed until after she was gone. By the time Mom got sick, Ashley had built a channel with over 400,000 subscribers. Her content had evolved. She'd found a niche that rewarded something specific, crying on camera while holding a sponsored product. A grief care package from a wellness brand. A weighted blanket, use code ASHLEY for 15% off. She framed it as healing. Her followers called her brave, authentic, raw. They sent donations for her emotional recovery journey. I never saw those funds go to anything but a renovated filming studio in her basement. The year Mom was dying of pancreatic cancer, Ashley's channel was thriving. She posted a video titled "My Mother Has Weeks to Live," which included a clip of Mom asleep in her hospital bed, filmed without consent. I confronted her. She said, "Mom would want me to use my platform to help others." Mom was too weak to fight, but her eyes told me everything. She was afraid of what her own daughter had become. Then came the day I found Mom alone at the kitchen table with a man I didn't recognize. Anthony Reyes, an estate attorney with 30 years of experience. He had a yellow legal pad and a calm, deliberate way of speaking. They didn't tell Ashley he was there. Over the following weeks, they met 3 more times. I learned much later that Mom had shown Anthony every one of Ashley's videos from the funeral period, including the sponsored segments. And she had asked him a single question. "Can I put conditions on what I leave my children?" Anthony told her she could. What he drafted, with Mom's explicit instructions, was unlike any will he'd prepared in his career. He told me afterward he'd never seen a parent create a clause specifically designed to be triggered by a live stream. But Mom had studied her daughter's patterns. She knew exactly what Ashley would do the moment her will was read. On the day Mom died, Ashley posted within the hour. Black and white photo. A long caption about heaven gaining an angel. 3 different affiliate links in the swipe up. By morning, the video had nearly 1 million views. The will reading was scheduled for 2 weeks later at Anthony's office. I arrived early. Ashley arrived with her tripod. She set it up facing the conference table, adjusted her hair in the camera preview, and hit the button. "What's up, guys?" she whispered. "You're not gonna believe what's about to happen." Anthony entered, opened the leather folder, and looked directly at the lens. "Before I begin," he said, "is this being recorded?" Ashley smiled. 14,000 watching live. Anthony nodded slowly. "In that case, I'm required by the terms of this will to read every word aloud, including the final clause, which your mother explicitly instructed me to reveal only if a recording was being made." He paused. "Let's begin." Anthony began reading the standard portions of the will. My mother's voice, filtered through legal language, filled the room. The house would be sold and proceeds split evenly. The savings accounts divided equally. Ashley leaned toward the camera, mouthing "told you" to her audience. She genuinely believed this was going exactly as she'd predicted. She'd get her half, I'd get mine, and she'd have footage of me appearing disappointed that I wasn't disinherited. a boring outcome she could spin however she wanted. But then Anthony turned the page, and his voice shifted. I've seen the recording since. You can hear the exact moment his tone changes, like a pilot announcing turbulence. I will now read the final codicil, added by Linda on September 18th, approximately 3 months before her passing. Quote, should any beneficiary of this will have, at any point in the 4 years preceding my death, recorded, broadcast, or otherwise publicly distributed images, video, or audio of any family member's medical treatment, funeral, or grieving process for purposes of commercial gain or social media monetization, that beneficiary shall forfeit their entire share. Said forfeited assets shall be redirected to a separate trust established this day, the Lucas Trust, for purposes I have outlined in a private letter to my daughter Jessica. Furthermore, should this codicil be read aloud in the presence of any recording device operated by or at the direction of the beneficiary in question, that recording shall serve as prima facie evidence of the violation. End quote. The room didn't make a sound for a full 5 seconds. I've thought about those 5 seconds more times than I can count. Ashley's face was frozen mid-smile, the expression she'd been holding for the camera. Her eyes went from Anthony to the phone to me, back to Anthony. The chat was moving so fast the comments blurred into a single scrolling smear. Anthony spoke again, gently. Ms. Ashley, as this reading is currently being live-streamed to your channel, the recording clause has been triggered, and the forfeiture provision is now active. You will receive nothing. Ashley lunged for the phone. She knocked over a water glass. The stream cut, but 14,000 people had already seen it, maybe more by then. The video was being clipped, screen-recorded, re-uploaded across platforms. There is no undoing something like that, but here's what nobody watching that stream understood. The clause wasn't some legal booby trap my mother set on a whim. It was the culmination of years of watching her oldest daughter transform grief into content. The funeral was only the beginning. After Dad died, Ashley started posting weekly grief processing videos. Every single one had a sponsorship segment spliced into the middle. She partnered with a DNA testing company, using the story of losing her father to sell kits. She partnered with a meal delivery service, framed as what I eat while grieving. She turned our family's worst moments into a recurring revenue stream. I sat down with Anthony the week after Mom died, and he showed me the folder she'd kept. Screenshots of every monetized funeral video, timestamps, a spreadsheet tracking the money she estimated Ashley had earned from grief content, and a note handwritten that said simply, I can't let her do this to Jessica and Lucas. Not again. Lucas is Ashley's son, my nephew. He's 7 years old, and he spent most of his life being filmed for content he couldn't consent to. Mom was his primary caregiver during Ashley's brand trips and influencer events. She saw what the channel was doing to him. She saw the cameras in his face during tantrums, during bath time, during moments that should have been private forever. So the codicil wasn't about punishment. It was about protection, and it was designed with an almost surgical precision. Anthony later told me that he and Mom went through 4 drafts. She was insistent that the recording trigger be included. She said, and I'm quoting her, if Ashley chooses to make this public, then the public can be the witness. What Mom didn't know was how big the audience would be. She died before Ashley's channel crossed the 400,000 mark. She had no way of predicting that the forfeiture would be broadcast live to tens of thousands of people, or that clips of the moment would accumulate millions of views within 48 hours. She just knew Ashley's patterns. She knew that a will reading was exactly the kind of event her daughter wouldn't be able to resist filming, and she was right. Ashley had been promoting the live stream for a full week. She'd teased it on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube community posts. You guys won't believe what my mom did in her will. Tune in Saturday. It's going to be explosive. She'd built the audience herself. She'd handed Anthony the trigger and asked him to pull it. The moment the stream ended, Ashley turned on me. Not Anthony, me. As if I were the one who wrote the will, as if I'd been hiding in the walls scripting the whole thing. You knew, she said, her voice shaking. You knew this was in there. I didn't answer, because the truth was I didn't know. Mom had kept me in the dark about the specifics. She'd only told me that she'd made arrangements, that I should trust Anthony, and that she loved both of us even if she couldn't protect both of us from each other. The private letter she'd left me was still in Anthony's safe at that point. I hadn't read it yet. I didn't know about the Lucas Trust. I didn't know she'd named me as the trustee. That revelation was still coming. But what I did know, standing in that office with Ashley's rage radiating toward me like heat from an open oven, was that my mother had done something remarkable. She'd used the platform that had corrupted her daughter to expose that corruption in real time. And she'd done it from beyond the grave. Ashley stormed out of the office, leaving her tripod behind. The ring light was still on, beaming a cold white circle onto an empty chair. Anthony closed his folder, removed his glasses, and looked at me with an expression I can only describe as profound weariness. "Your mother told me to give you something else," he said, "but she asked me to wait until after your sister had left." He walked to a small safe in the corner of his office and returned with a sealed envelope, my name on the front, my mother's handwriting. He also placed a document on the table, a trust document notarized and recorded. The Lucas Trust. It held everything Ashley had forfeited, and at the top of the trustee designation line, my name. I didn't open the letter then. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard to unfold paper. But I held it against my chest, and I could smell her perfume faintly on the envelope, and for the first time since her death, I cried. Not for the money, not for the viral moment, for the woman who'd spent her final months constructing a life raft for her grandson and a shield for her younger daughter, knowing she wouldn't be there to see it work. Outside, the story was already moving faster than any of us. The stream clips were spreading across every platform. Someone had pulled the exact moment Ashley's expression shifted from smug to shattered and made it a GIF. News outlets were calling Anthony's office. A reporter from a national morning show left a voicemail asking if he'd do an exclusive interview about the forfeiture clause. And Ashley, sitting alone in her car in the parking garage, was watching her subscriber count drop in real time. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications from her management company, her sponsors, her editor. But she wasn't answering, because for the first time in her career, the camera had captured something she couldn't edit, couldn't spin, couldn't delete. It had captured the truth, and the truth was going to cost her everything. Within 24 hours, the clip had been viewed over 3 million times. By the end of the week, it was north of 12 million. Every major aggregator account had reposted it. The moment became a meme, a cautionary tale, a piece of internet lore. And Ashley, who had spent years carefully curating an image of vulnerable authenticity, was suddenly the villain of a story she couldn't edit. Her sponsors pulled out first. The wellness brand that had paid her to hold their tea while crying about Dad released a statement about family values and terminated their contract within 6 hours. The weighted blanket company, the one she'd promoted using footage from Mom's hospital room, issued a public apology and donated $50,000 to a grief support nonprofit. They scrubbed every trace of her from their website. Her management company dropped her by end of day Monday. "Brand safety concerns," the email said. She forwarded it to me with a single line. "Are you happy now?" But the money was only the first wave. The second wave hit harder. People who had followed Ashley for years, who had sent her donations and messages of support, began to realize they'd been manipulated. A former subscriber posted a thread documenting every sponsored grief video Ashley had ever made, with earnings estimates. The total was staggering. Nearly $200,000 over 4 years, all earned from content featuring our father's death and our mother's illness. The thread went viral too. It was titled, "The Grief Influencer Industrial Complex." Ashley's channel lost 60,000 subscribers in 3 days. Then came the third wave, and this one was the worst, because it was about Lucas. The private letter from my mother was 6 pages long, written over several nights, each paragraph dated. I read it in Anthony's office after Ashley left, sitting in the same chair where the confrontation had happened, the ring light still casting its cold glow onto an empty space. Mom's handwriting was shaky in places. The medication made her hands unsteady, but her voice was clear. She wrote about the summer she realized Ashley was using Lucas as content. He was 4 years old, potty training, and Ashley had filmed the entire process for a sponsorship with a diaper brand. "He cried when he had an accident on camera," Mom wrote, and she made him do a second take. "I saw it with my own eyes." She said, "Let's try that again, buddy, this time with more feeling." He was 4, Jessica. 4 years old, and she was directing his shame. Mom documented everything. She'd kept a log of dates, times, and platforms. Videos where Lucas was visibly distressed and Ashley kept filming. Sponsorships where Lucas's medical information was shared. She wrote about the time Ashley left Lucas with her for 6 weeks while she went on a brand trip to Bali, posting poolside photos, while her son asked every day if his mother was coming home. He stopped asking after week 3, Mom wrote. He just stopped. He started calling me Mama by week 5. Ashley never corrected him. The letter explained what I hadn't yet fully understood. Mom hadn't just written a punishment clause. She'd created a rescue plan. The forfeited assets, Ashley's entire inheritance, would fund the Lucas Trust. I was named the trustee, with authority to use the money for Lucas's education, healthcare, therapy, housing, anything he needed. The letter went further. If you're reading this, Mom wrote, it means Ashley did exactly what I knew she would do. It means she prioritized her audience over her family yet again. And it means Lucas is in danger of being raised by someone who sees him as a prop. I need you to do something for me, Jessica. I need you to fight for him. The trust gives you standing. The videos give you evidence. Anthony has all the documentation. If you choose this path, you have everything you need to seek custody. I'm not ordering you to do it. I'm asking you. I'm asking you to be the mother to Lucas that I wish I could have been to Ashley before I lost her. I folded the letter and couldn't speak for a long time. Anthony sat across from me, patient, his hands folded on the table. Finally, he said, Your mother and I discussed a legal strategy. If you're willing, I can file an emergency custody petition by morning. The trust has resources to cover all legal costs. And the evidence she compiled, he tapped a USB drive on the table, is extensive. But before I could answer, my phone buzzed. It was Ashley's neighbor. Ashley had been live again. Not on her channel that was hemorrhaging, but on a different platform from a new account trying to reclaim the narrative. And she'd brought Lucas on camera. He was sitting on the couch behind her, wearing his school uniform, looking confused and tired. She was crying, telling her remaining followers that I had conspired with a lawyer to steal her inheritance and destroy her career. They're trying to take my son away from me, she said, pulling Lucas into frame. My own sister. That was the moment I made my decision. Not because she attacked me, because she'd used him. Again, live, to thousands of people, while he sat there, 7 years old, with no idea that his mother was once again trading his privacy for validation. I looked at Anthony. File it. The petition was ready by 9 the next morning. Anthony had been preparing for this possibility for months. He presented the court with Mom's documentation, with screenshots of Ashley's monetized videos featuring Lucas, with records of the 6-week abandonment, with the forensic accounting showing she'd spent over 40% of her influencer income on personal luxury purchases, while Lucas's school tuition went unpaid. Mom had been covering it. The judge granted an emergency temporary custody order within 48 hours. Lucas came to stay with me at my apartment, a small 2-bedroom I'd been living in alone since my divorce. He brought one suitcase and a stuffed dinosaur named Franklin. He didn't cry when Ashley dropped him off. That said more than any video ever could. The court case would take months to fully resolve, but the temporary order gave me standing, and the trust gave me resources. Mom had thought of everything. Meanwhile, Ashley's situation continued to collapse. Without her channel income, without her sponsors, without her inheritance, she couldn't afford the mortgage on the house she'd bought with her influencer money. The car was repossessed in month 2. She moved into a rented room in a suburb 40 minutes away. She started a new channel, a rebrand, something about cancellation and redemption. It never cracked 10,000 subscribers. The internet had moved on, but it had left her behind. And through it all, I kept thinking about the final lines of Mom's letter. She hadn't written them in anger. She'd written them in grief, not for herself, but for the daughter she'd lost long before the cancer took her. Ashley wasn't always like this, Mom wrote. She was my baby, my firstborn, and I loved her with a ferocity that scared me sometimes. But somewhere along the way, she learned that attention was love and money was safety. The algorithm rewarded her worst instincts. The platforms profited from her pain. I don't blame her entirely. I blame a system that turns tragedy into content and calls it connection. But I couldn't let that system claim Lucas, too. I couldn't let another generation be raised in front of a camera lens. You were always the one who understood that some things are too sacred to share. That's why I chose you. Not because I loved you more, but because I trusted you to protect what I could no longer reach. I read that paragraph every night for the first month Lucas lived with me. It reminded me that this wasn't a victory. It was an inheritance of responsibility, handed to me by a woman who had planned for a battle she hoped she'd never have to start. But she did start it, and now it was mine to finish. The custody hearing took place in a small family courtroom with fluorescent lights and wooden benches that smelled like old paper and anxiety. Ashley arrived without a camera. That alone told me how much had changed. She wore a blazer she'd borrowed from someone. It didn't quite fit, and she kept her phone face down on the table. No live stream, no ring light, just a woman watching her life get dismantled by her own choices. Anthony presented the evidence my mother had compiled. The monetized videos of Luca's during vulnerable moments. The 6-week abandonment. The forensic accounting showing that while Ashley had earned nearly $200,000 from grief content, she'd spent less than 3% of it on her son's needs. The rest went to designer purchases, a leased luxury SUV, and a basement renovation for her filming studio. My mother, by contrast, had been paying Lucas's school tuition, his medical bills, and even his clothing for the past 2 years. The documentation was undeniable. The judge, a woman in her 60s with a no-nonsense haircut and glasses on a chain, reviewed the evidence in silence for what felt like an eternity. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but carried the weight of someone who'd seen too much. Ms. Ashley, the court is not here to judge your career choices, but we are here to judge whether those choices have compromised the welfare of your child. Based on the evidence presented, I find that they have. She granted me temporary custody pending a final review in 6 months with supervised visitation for Ashley. The trust would cover Lucas's expenses in the interim. Ashley didn't scream or cry or make a scene. She just sat there, very still, as if someone had pressed pause on her body. When the hearing ended, she walked past me without a word. I caught her expression for just a moment, not anger, not even sadness, something more like collapse. The whole architecture of her life had fallen in on itself. Lucas started therapy the following week. The first few sessions were quiet. He didn't trust adults, not really, and I understood why. But somewhere around the 3rd month, something shifted. He started talking about Grandma Linda. He remembered her reading to him, making him cinnamon toast on Saturday mornings, showing him how to plant marigolds in the garden. He didn't talk about the cameras. Not yet. The therapist said that would come later when he was ready. We settled into a routine. I'd wake him up at 7, make breakfast, drive him to school. After school, we'd go to the park near my apartment, the one with the big oak trees and the pond with ducks. He liked to feed them bits of stale bread I kept in a Ziploc bag. He'd crouch by the water's edge, very serious, distributing the crumbs evenly so no duck got left out. It was at that park, on a Tuesday afternoon in early autumn, that I realized my mother hadn't just left me a legal strategy. She'd left me with her grandson. This small, serious boy who fed ducks and worried about fairness. He was the gift I hadn't known I needed. The surprising detail, the one I didn't tell anyone for almost a year, came from a second letter my mother had hidden inside the first. It was tucked behind the last page, folded smaller, and I hadn't noticed it until the night after the custody hearing. In it, Mom wrote about herself. Not about Ashley or Lucas or me, about her own childhood. She wrote about her father, a man who'd filmed everything on a Super 8 camera, who'd made family dinners into productions and birthday parties into mini-films. She'd grown up feeling like the camera was a third parent, always watching, always evaluating. She hated it. She'd never told anyone. That was why she'd seen Ashley's pattern so clearly, she wrote. Not because she was prophetic, but because she recognized it. She'd spent her childhood performing for a lens, and she'd watched her daughter do the same thing to her own son. The codicil was personal in a way I hadn't understood. She wasn't just stopping Ashley. She was breaking a cycle that started long before any of us were born. 6 months later, the final custody review came. I was granted permanent guardianship. Ashley's visitation remained supervised, and she was ordered to attend a parenting program focused on child privacy. The trust continued to fund Lucas's needs. There was still enough in it, Anthony told me, to cover private schooling through high school and a substantial college fund. My mother had calculated carefully. Ashley and I didn't speak for nearly 2 years. Then one day she called. Not from a new account or through a manager, just her voice on the other end, quiet, smaller than I remembered. She didn't ask for money or for custody or for forgiveness. She asked if she could come to the park and watch Lucas feed the ducks. Just watch, she said, from a distance. I said yes. She came on a Sunday. She sat on a bench 15 feet away from us and she didn't take out her phone. Not once. Lucas noticed her. He looked at me, then at her, then back at the ducks. He didn't wave. But he didn't flinch either. That, I think, was the beginning of something. Not reconciliation exactly, not yet, but the possibility of it. The camera was gone, and in its absence, there was finally room for something else to grow. My mother didn't live to see the outcome she set in motion. She never saw the live stream that cost Ashley her inheritance. She never saw Lucas feed the ducks with his hands steady and his eyes off a screen. She never saw me become the guardian she was asking me to become. She just wrote the letter, amended the will, handed Anthony the USB drive, and trusted that the truth, once uncaged, would do its work. I think about that a lot. The faith it requires to plant a seed you'll never see bloom. To set a trap you'll never watch spring. She had no guarantee Ashley would live stream the reading. She had no proof the clause would hold up in court. She just knew her daughter's patterns well enough to bet on them, and she knew me well enough to believe I'd finish what she started. There's something deeply unsettling about a world where grief is content and children are props, and the most intimate moments of a family's suffering are repackaged as branded storytelling. But there's also something quietly powerful about a woman who, from her deathbed, figured out how to use that same machinery to protect what mattered. She didn't try to cancel her daughter. She simply removed the incentive to exploit. She made the very act she was trying to stop the trigger for its own consequence. And she did it all while the cancer was taking everything else from her. Lucas asked me once, about a year into living together, if he would ever have to be on camera again. I told him no, not unless he chose it when he was old enough to understand what it meant. He nodded very seriously and went back to his Legos. That was enough for him. It's enough for me too. If this story stayed with you, if it made you think differently about what we're all scrolling past every day, then share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit subscribe if you want more stories like this one. Drop a comment below. Tell me what you would have done in my mother's position. I read them. Some legacies are loud. Hers was quiet, written in legal language, sealed in an envelope, waiting for the right moment to speak. And now it has.